guys, welcome here. If you're new here, my name's Bethany. I'm the girl behind Well Loved Knits. We're going a little low tech today because I'm very much in a season of life that I just need to take any opportunity that I can to film. So setting up the camera and having all of that, thinking all of that through is just not where my head's at right now and just not something that we can do currently. So it's been a while since I've sat in front of any type of camera to record something because we went on a trip to the US and it was really great. I'm still kind of in vacation mode, jet lagged, and trying to get my head back into a routine for many different reasons. Obviously because we were traveling internationally and now, you know, the time difference is something to be adjusted to, but then also just mom life is a little bit more than it has been over the last couple of months. Arthur turned 9 months a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and yeah, with that comes a lot of changes. He's learning so much right now. He's learned how to, it feels like he's learned how to crawl, pull himself up to stand, and I don't know, other things too. It's just, he's learning so much in such a short period of time. It was only a matter, first he started crawling maybe a couple of weeks ago, like really moving and like getting himself from one place to another so that we had to like chase him around. And then it seemed like just immediately after, he's just not happy with that. He wants to stand up now and he wants to start trying to walk. Of course, all of this is very much with our help. Like he can't do all of that on his own. But even still, it's just kind of mind-blowing how much he's changing so quickly. And just trying to keep up with all of that has made it a little bit more difficult for me to think about myself and my hobbies and what I like to do. So that in combination with traveling is why I've been very quiet. And I appreciate you guys sticking around and clicking on this video to catch up with me. I don't really have much of a plan. Like I said, I am just kind of trying to seize the moment and I have a couple of minutes. So I thought I would sit down and tell you guys what I got from the US. Very humble yarn haul, but a yarn haul nonetheless. So I thought it would be interesting to chat about and kind of have a separate video for it because I do want to take some time and think about reacquaint myself with the projects that have been on hold over these last couple of weeks. Yeah, that will be its own separate thing. But for those of you who really like yarn acquisitions, I don't normally have that many. I've been really trying to pare that down. This year in particular, I haven't really welcomed a lot of yarn that I've personally shopped for. So this is different and exciting. But again, to curb your expectations or, you know, don't think that this is a really crazy yarn haul. It's very humble. So let's get into it. I don't really know where to look. So you can see that I'm looking around in different places because I'm recording this on my phone. Also, I'm not used to just doing one take. So hopefully this all works out and hopefully I'm speaking in a way that's easy to follow. So we'll see. Right, so a couple of weeks back, when I managed to record, I had talked about some yarn that I would be really interested in giving a try. So if you checked out that video, you might find some of these very familiar. So I'll just go with the first one that I got, that I actually ordered before I even stepped onto American soil. I knew that I wanted to give this yarn a try. And so I went on Etsy and I just, you know, had fun and tried to really make up my mind on what I wanted to get from this indie yarn dyer. So this is from Nomadic Yarns. I mentioned in my last video about yarn I wanted to try. I wanted to try Nomadic yarn for her self-striping socks. And she just has a lot of great colorways and she had a fiber that was very interesting to me. She's based in the US. I'm not quite sure where, but I've had my eye on her yarn for a very long time. And the reason that I never purchased was that it would be double the price, I think, to get it shipped to me. The problem with a lot of US yarn, I can't get it because I'd have to pay an extra cost, like an import tax. So if I do that, I must really love the yarn. So luckily I was visiting my parents and I was able to get it delivered to their place. So this is just a really gorgeous skein right here. This is only one. I was very, very good. It was very difficult to decide. Ultimately, my decision was made up for me because her yarn is in very high demand, and I mentioned that I wanted to use or check out the yak sock base that she has. So this yarn right here is the yak sock. It's 437 yards per 100 grams, and it's 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, and 10% nylon. I've never worked with yak yarn, but from the pictures in her shop, it takes the dye in a really unique way in comparison to 100% wool, for example. So just the color alone was enough for me to be curious. And I think I've seen a couple of podcasters in the past using yak sock yarn and really loving it. So I thought this was also a really good opportunity to get a new fiber on my needles. And this right here is the Reading Rainbow colorway. And I will put a picture of, well, no, I won't, because I'm not gonna edit this. I will leave a link to this yarn in the description, and so that you can see the difference, like really the difference between the wool and the yak and how much that changes the color. This is very metallic, it's very dark and moody, kind of like how the sky is right now. So hopefully it's kind of true to color on the screen, but I really love it. There's some nice teals, purples, greens, a nice tan color, a little bit of red. This is gonna make really cool socks. So these are self-striping, and it's just gonna make a really lovely striped pattern as I knit these socks up, which is one of my favorite things about socks, honestly, is if I work with a self-striping yarn. I really enjoy projects like that. So I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this skein. I'm gonna wait a little bit on it. I think this is definitely one of those special skeins, but I'm not gonna make it so special that I'm not going to cast it on right away. There is another sock that I would love to have on the needles, or sock yarn rather, that I'll share with you in just a little bit. But I am really happy that I am finally able to get my hand on some of these skeins, or my hands rather, on this skein. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how the yarn feels to the touch. It feels great, but you know, working it up and seeing what kind of fabric it produces, I've definitely got a couple of sneak peeks on Etsy, but it's gonna be exciting to see it for myself. Yeah. So there you go. Right. So I'm just making sure, I hope you can hear me okay. I'm using earpods. I've got a very different setup, so if I'm a little distracted, it's probably because I'm getting weird notifications about my headphones and everything. I don't really know what's happening. I hope everything's okay. So yes, I didn't really mention that I was in the US for about 2.5, almost 3 weeks. And honestly, the majority of the time we were there, we didn't really do a lot of shopping. It was like when we first arrived that we had a whole bunch of energy to just check out a bunch of shops that I personally haven't seen in years, and Roz hasn't been to before in some cases. So that was, it was very exciting. And one of which was Michael's. Michael's, we did a craft store day. The only two places, or only two craft stores in South Carolina, which is where my family's at, there, we went over to Hilton Head. And there's not, as you can imagine, it's a very warm place. There's not a lot of yarn shops. There's one actual yarn shop, but it's more of a needlepoint place. It's called Needlepoint Junction, which is probably the only dedicated craft store, like local craft store on the island. And then there's 2 big box craft stores, which would be Michael's and Hobby Lobby. And I went to all 3 of the ones that I just mentioned. First of all, related again to what I wanted to try yarns, like what yarns do I want to have on the needles in the near future? What did I want to give a try? I talked about Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool. Now, Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool is very rustic, very warm, 100% wool. To paint the picture, Hilton Head Island, it's a beach town, it's an island, it's very warm. It's a very nice place to be all year round. So as you can imagine, probably anyone who's really into knitting, and there's probably not that many people into knitting over there, if they are into it, they want to do like lighter, more summery fibers. So Fisherman's Wool was not available in Michael's. I don't know if they normally carry it, but they do carry Lion Brand yarn. And so in replace of the Fisherman's Wool, I picked up some other type of Lion Brand yarn to give a try. Now, I just went on a whole spiel about how it's very warm weather and this is quite bulky yarn. Go figure, but this colorway really stood out to me, and I was really interested in seeing how the colors work up. And it reminds me a little bit of handspun yarn, specifically yarn that I see on Casey Apple's spinning wheel. Andrea Mowry also has probably made something very similar to this. And that's exactly what I kind of have in mind, is something inspired by Andrea Mowry, for sure. So this is Lion Brand Wool Ease Thick and Quick, which I've heard a lot about as well from knitters in the US. And this is a super bulky yarn, 80% acrylic and 20% wool, which makes it machine washable. It is 80 meters per 140 grams. So there's not a lot of yarn here. It says 2 balls can make a scarf, 1 ball can make a hat, and 7 balls can make a sweater. I guess that just depends on what size you are. I saw these and I was interested in this yarn, but as you can see, it's quite big. So I didn't want to go crazy on it. I didn't really have a project in mind. I just liked it. And so I wanted to give it a try. So I only picked up 2. One in this color, which is, I don't know if it has a colorway name, Coney Island. Oh, okay. Coney Island is the colorway name. It has these really nice like orangey yellow, some greens, pinks. It has like all kinds of colors there, and it's plied with some cream or gray. I'm really interested to see how it works up and like what the color looks like as it's working into a fabric. I think that's going to be really pretty. And to pair it with it, I just got a plain old cream. Now there wasn't much of a selection, so there were only like 2 of each left. So I just went with 1 because, again, for packing purposes, I didn't really want to take up all of my potential yarn space with big bulky yarn that, you know, I mean, I can't get this here. At least I haven't really looked if I could get this here, but yeah, it's just, I didn't want bulky yarn really to take up all of my suitcase. This is a really nice cream color. The yarn seems really nice. It's acrylic, which is not normally something that I would go for, but again, the color is really what spoke to me here. And brand and name recognition, Woolies Thick and Quick, I've heard of it before. So I figured it would be a good one to try, a safe one to try from Lion Brand. I think it's generally known as being a pretty great yarn. And I don't know how much I will be able, or what I will be able to create with this, but I was thinking of trying out brioche, like two-tone brioche with it. And if all I can really get is just like a swatch, I think I'll be happy. It's more of like, this yarn would be fun to use to practice that stitch, because I've never worked on a brioche anything before. So that's really what I have in mind for this. If it turns into something, that would be great. I'm thinking maybe I just start with like a shawl. It's not gonna be a shawl like I'm thinking that's really gonna cover me. I obviously don't have enough yarn for that, but I was thinking that if I just start and grow a triangle out and see where I go. Maybe I could get a scarf. And if I can't, again, I'm really just trying to test out this the stitch. And if I get a swatch, that could be fun, maybe as like decoration or something. I'm really not, I don't know. I don't really have plans with this. It's really just, I liked the color, the yarn is kind of familiar to me, and I want to try out brioche, so I thought all of that together would be a really great combination. So this will be a fun one to dive into, I think, in the fall, maybe in the winter time, to have something thicker on my needles that will remind me of my vacation from the summertime. It'd be pretty nice. Okay. And of course, because it was the only other place on the island, I did pick up something from Hobby Lobby. This is their Yarn Bee. It's the authentic hand-dyed yarn that they offer. I purchased some the last time I was in the US. I purchased some really beautiful red hand-dyed skeins, and I liked it, but I didn't like the color. I liked the color in the skein form, but then when I was working it up, I was just like, I really don't know what I'm gonna make out of this. And so I think I tried to make a gift pair of socks with it, but obviously this yarn is not made for socks. It really doesn't have the strength for it. I'm saying obviously, you don't know. I'm trying to look to see what the specs are. It's just 100% superwash wool. It's 400 yards, 365 meters per 100 grams, and I'm trying to read it recommends a 3mm knitting needle, so it doesn't really say what weight it is. It kind of looks like a sock weight yarn, which made me think that it would look good for socks, but it really doesn't have a high enough twist for it, and it pills very easily. Even still though, I do really like the colorway. I thought it was really pretty, and when I saw it, I thought, I think this would be really nice for a camisole potentially, or a bralette, something from Naked Knit. I've been meaning to knit up one of their patterns, and I have the everyday bra, I think, and I thought that this would be a really nice one to do. Like this yarn would be really nice to have with it because it's nude. It would go under and work under something like this, for example. I wouldn't have to worry about seeing color through this sweater or any other potential ranunculi or something like that, like a more open gauge or lace textured sweater. It would be really nice to have something like that on the underneath. And I just really liked the specs. I thought it was really pretty. They didn't really have much of a selection either. The thing that was really shocking to me about both Hobby Lobby and Michaels is just how picked over everything was. I think Hobby Lobby definitely had more things stocked, just not the hand-dyed yarn. Most of what I could find was all acrylic, and it wasn't really what I wanted, or cotton. But again, I was in a warm climate, especially in comparison to here. I really just don't think that knitting is a thing in Hilton Head. So yeah, that just made it very difficult to find, I think, a lot of options. I could have definitely done a lot more online shopping, but I just wanted the thrill of going in the store and picking it out myself. So it was also giving me something to do, to check out the area and see the neighborhood, and again, try out a bunch of shops that I hadn't seen for a really long time, that I don't get a lot here, because we do have one big box craft store, which is Schleiper. It's a German craft place. I think it's more of like an art supplies store, but they really only carry Rowan yarn and Rico design. Those are the only two yarns that they really carry. So I was more excited to try out something in the US. I feel like they offer more brands, or like different brands. Hobby Lobby, not a good example because they only offer their brands, Yarn Bee, I guess. And I don't really know too much about it, but anyway, I wanted to pick up this skein because I thought it was a really good deal, and I really liked the colorway, and I thought it would look really nice for, again, like I said, some undergarment of some kind. So that would be a fun one to cast on the needles. whenever I get the chance to do that. Yeah, I think probably underwear and undergarments and camisoles and things are not necessarily on my high priority list, but it's nice to have the option. So I think that would be a good one to have. Okay, so I'm kind of flying through these. Oh, but I've been recording for 20 minutes, so that's wild. Okay, bear with me. I have one more shop that I managed to get into, and this was the local yarn store. Again, it's called Needlepoint Junction, so if you're in the Hilton Head area, definitely go check it out. It's great from needlepoint, and if you have been following along, or if you caught up with me on some other videos, I did mention that I was getting into needlepoint, so this was very fun for me to go and visit from that perspective too, because they had so many patterns for needlepoint, and it was a whole new world, you know? Like different patterns to do, like keychains. They had kits for cozies and coasters and passport holders, so many different things. It was really great, not just the traditional pillows that you can do, because I knew with needlepoint you can make it into a pillow, for example, or you could frame it and make it art, but they had so many different kits to kind of show you what else you could do with your needlepoint projects. So I came out of that store very inspired, dangerously so. I didn't actually buy any needlepoint kits or anything like that. None of the patterns, a lot of them were very beachy and just not something that I could see myself welcoming into this particular, sorry for the background noise. It's okay. It's just not something that I could welcome into my my apartment. It just didn't really fit with the theme that I have over here. So, you know, like flip-flops and beach chairs and things. It works in a beach house. It doesn't really work everywhere. So okay, yes. So when I was there though, they do have yarn for knitting, but just it's not the main thing. In the back corner, there's still a limited selection, but there is a selection nonetheless. So when I was looking back there, it was very, a lot of warm weather knits again, like a lot of linen blends and cotton and things and so on. But they had a bargain bin. And you know, as soon as I found that they had a bargain bin, I ditched the nice looking shelves and I started digging, because this thing was a mess. It was completely tangled, but it had so many great brands that I've wanted to try. Surprisingly, they were European brands that I've recognized, like Rauma yarn, and they had some Noro yarn, just not colorways that I was really into. But it was really about digging. I had to dig to find some gems. And what I did find was, in the spirit, again, of being on an island, I found some linen, which I've been meaning to try again. I mentioned that linen is not exactly my favorite to work with. I just haven't found one that I've really loved. And so, since this was all in the bargain bin and I managed to find 3 skeins of it, which was a feat, let me tell you, because this thing was picked over like crazy. And just completely messed up. So the fact that I could find 3 skeins intact like this and that matched was a big thing. So I figured, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and buy this yarn. So this is Shibui Knits, which is Japanese, so it's not even American, but I can't find this, or I haven't seen this in any of my local online stores or local to me in the area stores. So I thought this was a good one to pick up. And it's 100% linen in this really nice gray tone. Okay, I'm just gonna pick up one so you can see. Yeah, it's 100% linen. The color is ash. The dye lot is 1457. Color number is 2003. And it's a fingering weight yarn. Made in Japan, hand wash with care and lay flat to dry. Shibui Knits. I thought, because it's summertime, you know, we still have 2 months left of summer, I could potentially do something with this if I was in the mood to work on a summer knit. Of course, when we came back, obviously South Carolina is very, very hot in comparison to Belgium. It was in the upper 80s the whole time we were there, I want to say. We did get some like rainy weather. I think we brought it from Belgium. So we did have some days that were cooler, but just not anything like what we have over here, which is probably the hottest that it really gets, I think, is like 83, and that we're like, oh my gosh, we're dying. So yeah, it was definitely different. So coming back over here, it doesn't really feel like it's summer anymore, if that makes sense. So I don't know how motivated I am to really make a linen camisole, but I have the option, I have the yarn, and I was just really happy that I could find it in a bargain bin. I was kind of shocked at some of the yarn that was in this bin, because I was just like, how did people not pick this up already? I do have a clip of it, but I'm not going to edit it in. Maybe I'll share it next video and show you guys what this yarn bin looked like. It was a mess. And Roz was very patient, and he stood next to me and waited and held some of my yarn so I didn't get it lost, you know, and I wanted to make sure that I had the gems that I found. But yeah, it was a mess. So there was the bargain bin in the back of the store, but of course they had some really nice hand-dyed yarn that was local. So it was a local dyer. And this was at the front of the store, and it was really beautiful. And I think I had been there. I have like a vague memory of being there in the past, the last time I visited, so 2 years ago when I visited my parents in Hilton Head. I remember being at the store and looking at this yarn and just thinking, this would be a nice purchase, but you know, you have to invest in this kind of stuff. So this is from the Copper Corgi. It's a fiber studio of Savannah, Georgia. And I think the reason I didn't purchase it the last time was that it was from Savannah, Georgia, and not from South Carolina, because I was really envisioning this as a souvenir skein, you know? And while I did visit Savannah, I went to some yarn shops in Savannah itself. So that's where I kind of invested in my memory skeins for that trip. But this time, I don't know if maybe I just didn't notice it, or maybe I did notice it and I just wasn't as into variegated hand-dyed yarn and making socks than I am now, because I don't think I would have picked this up if I didn't enjoy making socks now, because it's hard for me to envision variegated hand-dyed yarn in like garments that I'm more used to making. So now that I'm more into it, now that I have more of a sock knitting mojo, I think that's really what made me think like I absolutely need to get this. So here's the skein. Again, it's from the Copper Corgi, which is a pretty local. If you know, Savannah, Georgia is actually very, very close to Hilton Head. So the two are it's just a very short drive in terms of the US. So it's basically local. But this one in particular is part of the, what is it exactly called? The Southern Towns series, which is Hilton Head Beach. That's what this colorway is. So they have a whole series highlighting Southern towns. I think some that I saw was, of course, Savannah, Georgia, and then also Asheville in North Carolina. That's the only other one that kind of stood out to me in the colorways that I was interested in. But this one is very pretty. It definitely reminds me of the beach. Hilton Head Island is probably a great, a great namesake for this one, because if you've ever been there, it's very green for a beach. There's so many trees. There's a lot of forest. There's a lot of growth. And that was very shocking. Not shocking in like any kind of bad way, but if you come from an urban place and then you go somewhere that has just so many trees, so much greenery, so many flowers, so many wild animals, alligators, lizards, frogs, all kinds of cicadas. I found cicadas in my shoe. I mean, we were like in wild territory. It was crazy. So that was a little bit of a culture shock, if I could put it that way. And I think this color definitely represents it. You got the tan of the sand, you got the blue of the water, and then you have the green for all the beautiful foliage. I think this was definitely a good souvenir skein, and will definitely, whatever I decide to knit up with this, it will be a really lovely way to remember the trip that we just had, which was long anticipated. We've been really excited to go over there, and that's why I feel like when I was there, I just completely checked out. I turned off, I unplugged. I honestly didn't have many moments to stay on my phone, which I loved. And that's a combination of, you know, seeing my family and staying with them. And we had a lot of visitors. My brother came in, I had friends that came to stay. It was really nice to, yeah, just connect with everybody. And then on top of that, yeah, just enjoy the vacation. But then, you know, mom life, like I was mentioning at the beginning, has been very hands-on lately. So yeah, the trip just went with a blink of an eye. And it's just crazy that we've gone there and then made it back. All in one piece. It's great. Traveling, just a couple minutes of just personal stuff with the travel and everything, in case you're curious. Traveling with a 9-month-old was surprisingly not the end of the world. I think I was definitely very anxious before going. I definitely didn't enjoy the flight like I normally do. I used to travel a lot. As you can imagine, when Roz and I were only dating and still doing long distance, we visited each other back and forth a couple of times a year. So I was very used to doing international flights, and, you know, sitting in a plane for 8 hours, yeah, that's a long time, but honestly, I enjoyed flying so much over the last years. And it's not that I absolutely hated flying this time, it's just that I didn't get to do, you know, obviously the things that I love about travel, like, you know, exploring the airport, doing a leisurely walkthrough. There was just so much more that I needed to think about than previously. Like when you travel by yourself, or when you travel just with your partner or something, I feel like it's just more laid back. Kids just bring something else to the mix, and being a mom and a parent, both of us, you know, we had to be on top of things. We had to make sure we were packing all the things for Arthur. We were making sure that he was going to be comfortable throughout the entire flight, keeping him entertained, making sure he got his naps in, which was probably the most difficult and most physically tolling thing I've ever had to do, is just like keep a newborn asleep during a flight or during travel. Because when we were going over there, oh my gosh, in total, the trip over to the US was like 15 hours. It was supposed to be 13, but then we also had to drive from the airport, and, you know, that also added into the travel time. And so he resisted sleeping for the majority of the beginning of that trip, and then by the end he was so cranky and I had to get him to sleep. He needed sleep because he had been up for so long that I was physically moving my body in ways that I don't know if it's supposed to, and contorting myself so that I was a human crib so that he could sleep. So that was not enjoyable, but you know, by the time we were there, we did get some relaxation in. And of course we had help from the grandparents, which is great. His aunt and uncle came, which was really great to see all of them together, to be all together as a family, which was really nice. And then coming home was even worse, because if you're anywhere, if you're checking the news or thinking anything about travel, you probably have heard that flights are just crazy right now. So we did have a canceled flight, which had to drastically change our travel plans, which ended up making us travel for 24 hours. So, you know, going over there at the 15-hour travel time, I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Little did I know that 24 hours was waiting for me at the end of the trip. But, you know, as you can see, we survived. We're not, you know, I've looked better, but I'm still here. I'm actually a little rested, which is great. And I just don't think we'll be traveling much again in the future. So I hope my AirPods have connected. I hope you can hear me because I keep getting notifications that they're connecting and disconnecting. So the audio could be all over the place, who knows? Roz's legs are hurting. Sorry for the background noise. I'm not gonna edit it out, but I am gonna stop this here because that's all I really have to share in terms of acquisitions, things from my US trip. I am sorry that I was kind of dark, but I'm sure you understand that, you know, with everything that I've just shared with you, it was a lot. So I'm looking forward now that I'm back home to get into a routine. We'll slowly kind of make our way into a routine, and, you know, I'll be able to dedicate more time, hopefully, to making videos and knitting because, like I said, I haven't really knit. I did finish one, and I won't go into it, but I did finish one project, very, very small, and I barely touched a whip on the needles that I actually managed to bring over with me to the US. And then I have a bunch of whips that I left over here, so I'm gonna reacquaint myself with them, and I'll update you guys next time about those projects and what I'm knitting on. Maybe some of these will turn into whips, but I don't think I need to do that. Okay, thank you guys for sitting down and chatting with me. I cannot believe how, you know, in the grand scheme of things, how well this unedited version is going. I was really worried. Hopefully the audio's okay. Thanks for sitting down with me. I hope you got a couple of rows in on whatever it is you're working on, and I will chat with you guys about projects very soon. All right, bye.